Good afternoon. I'm here to present on a Chinese activity construction, like the syntax and adnominalisation. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of the 9th workshop on adnominalisation for inviting me to present my work at such prestigious and long-standing conference series. I would like to thank the members of the audience at previous conferences, to whom earlier versions of my work were presented. Listing the conference venues here. And lastly, I would like to thank my supervisors and mentors in Chinese and theoretical or formal linguistics for helping me in understanding my topic. I mean, this wouldn't be possible without you. So here we go. Today, I'm going to talk about Chinese activity constructions, which are commonly described as this. So for example, 他的老师 and 他的好. This is a common formula for representing Chinese activity constructions. It's a hot topic in recent years. So for example, Huang in two recent papers, describes the research context and the various analyses that have been proposed for Chinese activity constructions. Thing is, it's very common in Chinese, for example, in Mandarin, to say things like this. So, for example, 他的老师，我当我的学生. Here, the structure of syntax, is a subject and a verb, and then the object consists of this nominalized structure. So the subject and nominalizer, and that's plus noun. Okay, so the subject, verb, and then a nominalized structure. It's also possible to say that 他的老师当得好, in which case the nominalized structure is in the subject position preceding the verb. Yeah. So here the nominalized structure, like before, consists of subject plus noun plus noun. Here it precedes the verb and functions as the subject of the verb. And after the verb, there's commonly some kind of complement clause that can denote various things. Now, this construction is very common in Chinese dialects. So for example, in Cantonese, we have a parallel structure, which I haven't glossed it because the glosses are exactly the same. This is exactly parallel to the first sentence above. For example, in Cantonese, we can say that 佢做佢嘅老師，我做我嘅學生. Okay, so he is being a teacher while I'm being a student. Yeah, the syntax is exactly the same. However, interestingly, is that in Cantonese, it's not possible to use the nominalized structure in subject position. So, unlike the second sentence here, Cantonese cannot express things like 佢嘅老師做得好. This is a very interesting micro variation that's been established by many people in the field. So, for example, Deng Xiying. He's written various papers on the dialectal distribution of the Chinese activity construction, and people have established activity nominals in subject position can be nominalized by Mandarin de, not by Cantonese ge, which constitute a very interesting micro variation between Cantonese and Mandarin, which I'll see later on. The dialects of a micro variation that we saw on the previous slide, it does seem to distribute quite neatly between north and south, because the northern dialects like Mandarin, you have these B forms as like as the adnominalizer, whereas the southern and also central dialects very commonly have these G forms, the G. So Tang has established this seems to be a north versus south dialectal distribution. Certainly, in many dialects where we have the G form as the adnominalizer, we get the same distribution that we saw on the previous slide. For example, these dialects, which I do not speak, but I've cited them from previous analyses. In the first half of the sentence, we can use the nominalized structure in object position. So, for example, if we look at Shanghai Ni, we use the de here as the object of the verb in line with Mandarin and Cantonese, etc. That's perfectly fine. However, we cannot use de as the nominalized structure in subject position. So, in the second half of the line, these forms are 一个螺丝 and 单个号。一个螺丝, so that's not possible. That's ungrammatical. We cannot use the as the normalizer when the activity nominal is in subject position. So this does seem to be a general big picture between north and southern dialects, where we can use the, not the, G forms as the head of activity nominals in subject position. So just to summarize, is that we can use both the and ge as the head of activity nominals in object position. In subject position, however, we can only use the, not G forms like Cantonese game. Okay, so this constitutes a very interesting micro variation from the and ge in these activity constructions. Right, so a few things that needs to be said about Chinese adnominalisers, which are commonly called structural particles in Chinese. So 结构 and 助词. Mandarin de is one of the most commonly used useful functional morphemes there are, because it has many examples and many usages that have been looked at by many people. So, for example, Dickens in his earlier work, he analyzes as a linker, which in his analysis is an inverse predicational marker. He analyzes as a predicational marker. It denotes predication between the specifier and its complement. But he also analyzes them as inverted predicational markers, which in his model are called linkers. Ed Rubens, in his famous 1994 PhD thesis, he proposed a new category called a modifier, which is also applicable to the, given often marks adjectives and attribution of nouns. But more traditional grammatical references focus on the possessive uses of the. And here, they compare Mandarin with Japanese no, which is also another a very common morpheme in Japanese. Although more recently, Murasaki, Saito, and Lin, they've voiced concern over some of the traditional analyses that seem to compare Mandarin and Japanese no in a parallel way. It's also commonly analyzed as a possessive marker. That's Mandarin de. But so I'm given the many usages of I think people like Paul in his recent paper have established that de can be merged in different positions on the nominal spine. It is a polyfunctional morpheme that we can merge in different positions. The same applies to Cantonese here, which is parallel to Mandarin de. People who work in Chinese dialects have also compared dialectal markers like Mandarin de and Cantonese here. So, for example, Joanna Xiu, we've established that possession and multiplication are the two main functions of these types of nominal functions. And then Joanna also looks at the many parallel similarities between Cantonese here and Mandarin de. All right, so in Chinese dialects, we get these D forms and these G forms that seem to be structurally and also functionally parallel. And while we can establish that these are nominal elements, we also get this dialectal distribution between north and south, and as Tang and Xing has established. One also needs to look at the Chinese nominal structure, which is quite complicated. I mean, we established on the previous slide, following Paul, etc., that these adnominalisers, the two main functions are possession and multiplication. So if we take into account all the various functional elements in the nominal domain, I think people have come to a general consensus that there is this orthographic order. So possessors tend to come first. So they are highest in the nominal domain. Below that, we get referential and quantification markers like demonstratives, numerals, quantifiers, etc. We then get classifiers. I mean, Chinese is a classifier language, and typologically, classifiers typically denote quantification. So they denote count properties. So it's no surprise that Chinese classifiers come below numerals and quantifiers, and they are associated with functions of counting and quantifying. Below classifiers, we get the lexical noun, and here we get usages of the as a modifier. The can introduce adjective and attribution markers in the lexical domain. So here is the cartographic arrangement of nominal elements that people have established. And if we're looking at some examples, for example, this is some example from Saito and Lin and Murasagi. This is Zhang San the San and Chomsky the Shu. Okay, there are two des that we can distinguish. The higher the first denotes possession. Okay, so it's specified. Zhang San, that's the possessor. So 3 books of Zhang San's. Below that, you get your Chomsky for sure. Okay, Chomsky here is the adjective. It denotes the content and the nature of these books. Chomsky for sure. So books about Chomsky. So here we get 2 structural positions that correspond to 2 different meanings of the high one being a possession and the low one being a modification. The same applies to Cantonese. So in the Cantonese, we can say so. There are 2 gears here. Right, so we can distinguish 2 structural positions in the Chinese nominal domain. Right, so if we project these various elements cartographically like this, right, so the 2 main positions are a modifier downstairs, you're following Ed Rubin's analysis, and also possessor, which we've established are higher than these various elements. People like Longobardi and Silvestri, they've looked at typological evidence, mainly from Western languages, like English and the Romance. The pos is a high nominal functional head. This seems to conform with the Chinese internal language data, because as we saw on the previous slide, it's possible to say things like this, which I we can distinguish 2 positions in the pos and mod, where the and the are merged. So these are the 2 structural positions that we can parameterize the various usages of the and the. Right. Such the background of the Chinese nominal domain. Let's get to the crux of the presentation today, and that's your Chinese activity constructions. Huang Zhengde, he influentially proposes that in these activity constructions, there's a light verb. Here he's following and developing on his previous similar work in 1997, and also that of his supervisee Lin Donghong in 2001, who provide a light verb analysis of Chinese. This follows, broadly speaking, the new Davidsonian analysis proposed by people like Larson, Doughty, Hale and Kaiser, etc. So it's light verb analysis that they've shown to be very prevalent in Chinese. And in this particular paper, Jim Huang proposes that activity constructions have this light verb do in them. For example, the spine of the construction, it consists of this: a dupi, which is a light verb, selecting a gerund phrase, a GP. The GP is nominalized by the, and by extension, all the various G forms that we have in dialects. So in order to account for the alternation that we saw in Ta and Ta Lao Shi, and also Ta Lao Shi Tang De Hao, where the nominalized structure can occur in either object and subject position. The final proposes this derivational structure. So let's go through this step by step. So in the first line, we get the base structure. it's like the do selecting a GP, a gerund phrase, where the GP denotes the activity event, and he represents this formally speaking as 他的当老师, so his being a teacher, a GP being dominated by do. In the second step, we get head movement. So here, the verb undergoes head movement, from the GP to the aligned verb do. Okay, so it undergoes a head movement to do in line with formal or syntax-semantic analysis of activity verbs, where it's been commonly argued that that verbs that denote activity move to this do projection. Once the verb is in do, it can select an argument and a specifier, which here is the actor. So for example, 他, that's how we get 他当他的老师. We get the activity nominal in the object position, and the activity in the subject position, but the base generator and specifier of do. And then Huang argues it's possible to delete the actor and move the remnant activity nominal to the specifier of do. That's how we get the subject position of activity nominal. So for example, 他的老师当得好. Its argument and deletion, also remnant movement of the GP to the specifier of do. And the final step is probably irrelevant for our analysis, but it's after we've moved the activity to specifier of do, we can add a complement after the verb, which is very common. So for example, here just 好 meaning well, 他的老师当得好, etc. So here's a brief summary of the derivational analysis proposed by Huang Zhengde. Tang, he essentially proposes the same proposal. So he adopts Huang's analysis in analyzing in analyzing the parallel structures in the Chinese dialects, namely Cantonese. Right. So it's do plus GP. And in Cantonese, if we look at the alternation again, so 佢做佢嘅老師，我有佢嘅老師做得好. If we apply the same derivational steps as Jim Huang does in 2008, so we get the parallel structure. I'll just briefly go through this again. So we get the base structure, which is do, aligned with selecting a GP, a gerund phrase, which is a nominalized structure. The verb undergoes a head movement from the GP to the aligned verb do, and then do selects an argument and a specifier, that being the actor. We hence get 佢做佢嘅老師, etc. We then delete the actor argument and have the activity undergo remnant movement to the specifier of do. That's how we get 佢嘅老師做得好. Okay, so the same derivational steps as Mandarin proposed by Huang. In order to account for the micro variation between Cantonese and Mandarin, as we recall, we cannot have 佢嘅老師 be active nominal in subject position. Huang proposed several analyses. In 2008, he proposed that Cantonese cannot normalize clauses. In contrast to Mandarin, because Zheng, in her earlier papers, has shown that it's possible to say things like 他的当老师. Okay, so you get normalizing a clause, which is not possible in Cantonese, according to Huang. 佢嘅做老師 is not grammatical. In 2009, Huang proposes that Cantonese and also dialectal G forms blocks the head movement of verb from GP to do. So that's another reason why he says that we cannot get the activity nominal in subject position. Lastly, in a slightly later paper, Tang in a paper in a chapter written in English argues that Cantonese is less grammaticalized than Mandarin de. It's more nominal than Mandarin de, and so Cantonese can only select concrete nouns rather than abstract activity nominals. Right, so these are, his various reasons for accounting for the micro variation between Mandarin and Cantonese. The fact in Cantonese it's not possible to use activity nominals in subject and position, as we established. Right, so if I just give you a brief summary of these formal analyses proposed by Huang and Tang. Okay, so there is subject and object asymmetry between the subject and object position of the activity nominals in these types of activity constructions. So for example, in Mandarin, we get this type of alternation. So 他当然他的老师 or 他的老师当得好. In Cantonese, however, we can say 就佢做佢嘅老師, but we cannot say here in bold 佢嘅老師做得好. Okay, so we crucially do not have this activity nominal in the subject position. The line form analysis proposed by Huang and Tang has this type of base structure where in the line form do select a gerund phrase, and we've been through the derivational steps. I'll go through them briefly again here. So it selects this gerund phrase, and the verb in the gerund phrase can undergo head movement to line form line form do. Line form do can then select an actor. Argument, and that's how we get to 他当 and 他的老师, where the activity nominal is an object position. We then delete the actor and move the remnant activity nominal to the specifier of do, and that's how we get the subject position of activity nominal. So for example, 他的老师 当得好. Here is a brief summary of the data and also the formal analysis that's argued to underlie it. But there are numerous criticisms that I think we can make towards this analysis, and it was just look at the formal structure again. So when Huang proposed this doopy alternation, and you would get this type of derivation that we've seen before. First of all, Huang makes it very clear that in the GP, in the nominalized structure, that the is criticized onto the external argument. So it's criticized towards it and is merged in the spec of GP. Now, while we agree that the in modern Mandarin is phonologically weak and it does function as eclectic, it's somewhat counterintuitive to argue that it's merged in the specifier of GP, because it's much more natural, considering that the is a nominal functional head. The is actually the head of the GP. And if it's the head of the GP, it should block head movement, of the activity verb. In the second step of Huang's derivational analyses, key thing here is the verb undergoes head movement from GP to do. But if we have the in the head position of the GP, which it should, then it would block this head movement. And secondly, in the third step, in the third and fourth step, sorry, where we delete the argument and propose the activity anomaly to the specifier of do. There is no explanation for why this happens. I mean, I'm not saying that it cannot happen, but however, there is as yet so no explanation as to why this happens. I mean, this looks a bit like passivization, where we delete the subject and move the object to the subject positions. Why? Because this clearly isn't passivization. Activity structures do not passivize. So as raised by Hu Qianhua in some analysis of the thematic properties of Chinese activity verbs, this type of derivation where we just delete one argument and just move the other is quite technically difficult and requires more explanation. My biggest concern regarding Huang and Tang's analysis is there are examples where the activity and the act and the activity seem to co-occur, and and if they co-occur in the same utterance, they seem to emerge in different A positions. So for example, in both Mandarin and Cantonese, it's possible to say things like this: 他当 and 他的老师当得好 or in Cantonese 佢做佢嘅老師做得好。Quite a few speakers of Chinese and dialects have remarked to me that in these examples, they will probably put a question mark over these examples because they see them as somewhat clumsy. However, none of them, I don't think, regards these as ungrammatical. So, we wouldn't put asterisks over them. We may consider putting, question marks over them for how long and cumbersome they are, because they are quite cumbersome. It's a very long utterance and somewhat unnatural. The crucial thing is these are not ungrammatical, and if they are grammatical, then we see that this is. These are examples where the activity and the actor and the activity phrase can co-occur. So in line with traditional projection principles, where arguments are introduced by A-heads, which are according to Lin's line verb analysis of Chinese, is one line verb per argument and thematic role. So we get one line verb introducing one particular type of argument / thematic role. And if so, we should posit two different line verb heads. A higher one, called do, for example, that introduces the actor argument in a specifier, and the lower one, which I informally call it done. There are various labels that we can apply to this, especially if we think of a Jillian Ramchand's line verb and sort of event structure analysis. However, for the purpose of this talk, I'll just call this informally as done. Okay, so it denotes the thing that's being carried out, so the activity in its specifier. Now, if we distinguish these two line verb A positions, there's no need for the ad hoc problem that I raised on the previous slides, and we do not need to delete the actor and then move the activity nominal to the specifier of do. All right, so we're bearing all of this in mind. I believe that there may be evidence to support more structure here, and there are two distinct A positions introducing the actor and the activity respectively. Okay. If we adopt this analysis, the derivation becomes quite different. Okay, so we now establish there is do and done, introducing the actor and the activity nominal for the verb phrase respectively. Oops, wait a minute. And the derivation would probably go something like this. Okay, so given that done is lower than do, we would merge the activity nominal in the specifier of do, and then merge the actor in the specifier of do. Okay, so we get in a bottom-up analysis, we would merge done first and then do, and we will merge the activity first and then merge the actor argument. Okay, so this again conforms to traditional analyses of projection principles and animacy, where people have shown that animate arguments tend to be much higher than inanimate ones. So in this analysis, the event structure of activity is such that actor is much higher than activity. And also, head movement of the verb. So if we apply a bottom-up derivation, which seems to be the norm these days, and also a spec head argument licensing structure for both of these line verbs. So the verb would move to activity verb, would move to activity first, where it introduces the activity nominal, and then it would move to do, where it introduces the actor nominal. This is again in line with the Larson's Beaky Shell analysis, where there's a spec head argument relation between the functional head and the argument here. If we apply this to Chinese, so the activity nominal, like Mandarin, so 他的老师, so he being a teacher, will be first merged in the specifier of done, and then we would merge the actor once the verb moves to do. Yeah, so the verb undergoes a successive head movement from the to done, where it introduces the activity nominal. The verb would then move further to do, where it introduces the actor nominal. We hence get,他的老师当得好, etc. And in this analysis, I would argue that the actor nominals, for example, here, 他 is raised from the activity phrase. For example, here, the activity phrase, which consists of 他的老师. Here, do is like a raising verb, and then it causes raising of the external argument from the lower activity phrase, which is formally in line with the possessor raising that's been shown in works on afflicatives, because people have shown that possessors of nouns can be raised to an A position, namely the specifier of afflicatives. Amy Rose Deal has written a famous paper about this. But so if we have a look at the derivation again, if we apply this to Cantonese, likewise we get parallel structures, and so we get done first, we introduce the activity nominal. We then merge the verb in do, where it introduces the actor nominal. The key difference between Cantonese and Mandarin, as we saw, is that the activity nominal headed by ge is ungrammatical in the specifier of done, whereas if it's headed by the, as we have in Mandarin, it's grammatical. Problem here is so we would posit some activity nominal in the specifier of done, where it's base generated, and it would undergo EPP and move to the specifier of t, and hence become the subject of the clause. And here we can only have the, not ge, as we established. Whereas if we project the actor argument, where the verb moves further to a higher light verb projection do, Cantonese immediately becomes grammatical. We can say 佢讀佢嘅老師, just like Mandarin, 他當 and 他的老師. So we seem to have this very interesting phenomenon is that 佢嘅老師, the activity nominal, is ungrammatical in the specifier of done unless there is a do projection above it, which can raise the activity nominal to the specifier of do. So do seems to somehow rescue the derivation of the activity nominal in the case of Cantonese. This seems to be somewhat strange, but we shall look deeper into this as we enter the final stages of my presentation. First of all, a few words needs to be said about the and ge as to why 他的老师 as an activity nominal is grammatical, especially in subject possession, whereas 佢嘅老師, these G forms are ungrammatical in subject position where there is no do. This probably goes down to the etymology between these D form and these G forms. People have long established that modern Mandarin comes from medieval Chinese D, and the medieval Chinese D, being a phrase final nominal lines, probably comes from classical Chinese to 者. All right, 者 is a very common classical Chinese phrase final nominal lizer, and I think is in the history of Chinese, the radical probably had some kind of an E sound, because if you look at the modern reflexes of you get your du and du. These three forms both have this D sound, like du. One could also mention do, the universal quantified do, which also has this radical, and it also has this D sound. But in the history of Chinese, what's now pronounced jaw probably has some kind of E sound to it. As such, it could be logically related to D and modern Chinese da. Okay, so I think we can propose the origins of modern Chinese da lie ultimately in classical Chinese zhe, which was probably pronounced with the D sound later on. So yeah, people like Liu Mingzhi and also more recently Edith Aldridge have proposed this. In this type of analysis, the historical examples of the seems to be quite a wide ranging, and the can select a wide range of nouns that do not necessarily need to be referential or even concrete. It can select some abstract nouns. And so, for example, so in these three historical examples, the select nouns that could be analyzed as abstract rather than concrete. So, for example, the first one. 知道自己的肩和枪舞得好，自己的肩与枪舞得好。These two nouns, 肩与枪, is it could be concrete, and they denote concrete arms and weapons that are being wielded. But, they could also denote a more abstract meaning of skill. So he wields his arms and weapons well. Yeah. And the second example 是他的棋子虽然被下得极高，他的棋子 his chess probably doesn't denote a real chess piece, but rather denotes this person's chess playing skills. Again, it denotes skill, which is an abstract entity. 他的棋子下得极高。A bit later on, we also get examples like this. For example, 桂老师的中国话说得很好。桂老师的中国话 again, this could denote a concrete thing known as the Chinese language, but in the context of this sentence, it probably denotes skill. So your teacher's skill or ability in speaking Chinese is very good, etc. So 中国话 need not denote specific language, but rather denotes language skills, which also tie in with some activity nominals. Right, so we've seen that in the history of Chinese, the coming from D can select these abstract nominals, which seem to anticipate modern Chinese activity nominals. With ge, however, all right, so the etymology of ge is different. It's been long established that ge comes from the general classifier ge. And the historical examples of so for example, in two very famous passages, ge clearly denotes specific concrete noun. Yeah? So for example, in the first example, 后面个僧只对看，后面个僧, okay, a very specific concrete person, monk that's behind you, 后面个僧。The second example, likewise, 中间个心。Okay, 但只应把这中间个心 okay, so the heart that lies in the middle. Again, so in these historical examples of ge, it denotes specific concrete real objects as opposed to abstract skills or activities. Right, so ge as a classifier and its adnominalizing reflexes in modern Chinese dialects seem to account in the individualizing function, which makes it incompatible with activity, because activity is abstract and non-delimited. This may explain why ge cannot select activity as its complement, and hence cannot form activity nominals as we see in Chinese dialects. Right, so if we look at the derivation of the Chinese activity verbs again, the light verb structure, which I've proposed, consists of two distinct light verb positions for both actor and the activity. So the structure, so we get do introducing the actor. We also get done introducing the activity nominal. So the light verb structure is below that there's the verb plus whatever complement that goes with it. So the light verb structure is something like this: do, it's done, it's VP. Okay, yes, I probably should have inverted the order, because in the bottom up derivation, so we get the verb first and then done and then do. Okay, so the derivational order should be the other way around here. The structure is this: we could do and done and then a VP. The doopy introduces the actor argument in the specifier, whereas don't introduces the activity in some specifier. Again, yes, I should have inverted the order here, because in a bottom-up derivation, so the verb moves to done first, where it introduces the activity nominal, and then moves to do, where it introduces the actor nominal in their respective specifiers. Yeah, so this this is in line with the theta criterion. That goes back to Chomsky's earlier work on theta structure, and there's one theta role per argument. So each light verb introduces a distinct and a unique argument. And in this derivation, where we get the verb that undergoes some cyclic head movement, right? So in the first step, the verb moves to done, but introduces the activity in its specifier. Okay, we get in Mandarin, for example, the activity nominal, 他的老师当好, etc. In Cantonese, however, 佢嘅老師 here in bold again is ungrammatical, because as we established on the previous slide, coming from a classifier, it tends to select count and individual nouns, so it's incompatible with abstract and activity nominals. So 佢嘅老師 in Cantonese and dialects is ungrammatical. Then in the next step, when the verb moves further to a higher light verb position, where it introduces the actor in some specifier. So for example, 他 or 佢. I've argued that the actor here is actually raised from a lower from the lower activity nominal. So for example, 他的老师 or 佢嘅老師 inspect done. So do is like a raising verb. It raises the external argument, i.e. the actor, to the specifier of do. Here, the interesting thing is the raising of the actor, as we saw on a previous slide, seems to rescue the derivation for Cantonese, because once we get the actor, we suddenly get grammatical forms like 佢做佢嘅老師. Okay, so I'm projecting do and introducing actor renders 佢嘅老師 grammatical, and that's because here, the raising of the actor from the activity phrase indicates that the activity phrase probably consists of a clausal complement. So in contrast to the first derivational step, where both the and ge select a noun, which in the case of ge has to be counted individual and delimited, etc. If we have movement to do where it introduces the actor, the activity nominal probably consists of an embedded clause selected by the and ge. And within the clause, there is minimally a doopy, which base generates the actor, and the actor then undergoes raising to the specifier of do. Because in my analysis differs from Huang's reservation towards not being able to normalize clauses. I argue here that select a clausal complement in which the actor raises to the specifier of do in the main clause. So this is essentially a bicausal analysis. So if we try to formalize this in terms of trees, right? So we get this type of construction. In the bottom of a derivation, so the verb moves to done first, where it introduces the activity nominal in the specifier. Here, the activity nominal being headed by both the and ge selects an NP nominal complement. And here, okay, there are differences between the and ge, because the is more flexible, whereas ge has to select count and individual nominal complements, which makes it incompatible with activity. So 佢嘅老師 cannot denote activities. Now, if the verb moves further to a do line verb pair, it selects an actor in the specifier of do. And here, for example, we get 他 and 佢, etc., meaning he. The activity here is raised from, as if the actor here is raised from the activity in spec of done. As such, the activity phrase here has to consist of an embedded clausal complement. Here, I've argued that the clausal complement minimally consists of do be. It could be a full T, but I think for our purposes, let's just focus on the do be bit. Where the actor is base generated and then raised further to the specifier of do in the matrix clause. Yeah. So if we compare these two activity nominals, in the first structure, okay, it's a D or G plus an NP. Yeah, an NP that has to be count an individual in the case of G. However, if we project further and introduce an actor argument in the specifier of do, we would have to argue that the activity nominal actually consists of a clausal complement, where the and G selects a clausal complement, a do be minimally, which differs radically from the previous step. All right, so without do, i.e., if there is no actor that's being projected, only the, not g, can head the activity nominal for reasons that I've been given. If we project further and have a matrix actor in the specifier of matrix do be, then the embedded clause in the activity nominal has to base generate the actor as well. But here it consists of D and G plus a clause, as opposed to D and G plus a noun. We hence get these differential patterns between the activity nominal in Chinese dialects. So oops, just to wrap up, so summary and conclusions. Yeah, so in this presentation, I focus on the dialectal distribution between Mandarin and Cantonese game, which can be extended towards the northern southern divide in Chinese dialects. We've seen that there are inherent differences between the and ge. Southern forms ge being declassified. It seems to discount an individual feature that the doesn't have. So if we project a do in the main clause and select an actor argument, the activity and nominal phrase downstairs needs to have an actor argument as well, because it needs to base generate an actor argument to be raised to the spec of do, in which case the activity nominal that consists of the or g selecting a clause, minimally a do be. If we don't have do in the main clause, and we only have the activity nominal being merged in the specifier of done. And here, only the is possible, because the cannot select abstract nominals like activity due to its count individual and delimited properties. Right, last should be said about the line complex that I've proposed. It seems to be quite different from a canonical nominal activity construction that's seen in English and Japanese. So in both English and Japanese, it's been posited there is this N to V movement and V to do movement, where the noun moves to the verb position and it moves further to the light verb do position in denoting activity, whereas the do and done and VP structure seems to be a bit more elaborate, and there is this additional functional head that introduces the activity nominal that makes quite different from English and Japanese, but also ties in with the fact that as proposed by Jim Huang and Lin, Chinese is a neo-Davidsonian language, in that there are many light verbs, and according to Lin, is one light verb per argument / thematic role. So if we analyze activity as a legitimate nominal argument, then we will need to have a separate light verb projection for activity as well. Okay, so thank you very much. Can I just thank you all in both English and Chinese, and please keep in touch, and please so my contact details are available online, and here is a little structure that I drew hastily just to show that the normal structure between the and the. Thank you very much.